How you doing? This is Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that actually hits home, and meaning it's kind of personal again. See, autism and ADHD, childhood trauma, and what that's actually like growing up in what is considered by many to be a broken mental health system, especially back then. Now, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s like myself, or even in the early 2000s, you very well are most likely going to be able to relate to numerous things that I'm going to talk about in today's episode. Now, if you were a child like myself, you did not really fit into what was considered society's social group molds, or what they consider normal grouping. You often ended up getting stuck between doctors, specialists, teachers, and new mental health programs that honestly, to myself, kind of proved that they simply did not know where to place us at in society, or what to say we should be like, what grouping we should be placed with, kind of. So we were basically wired differently than everybody else, and that was the confusion behind that. Now, today I wanted to share what it's like, the truth behind being treated like that from a child's perspective, when I was thinking back on it. See, what it actually really felt like, because it wasn't just about being different. It was about how to manage us, and how to correct, and how to properly medicate us. See, how they treated you was basically like a medical experiment, especially if your parents actually granted them permission to do so. Now, maybe, just maybe, you're going to hear parts of your own story within today's episode, like I said earlier. The 80s or 90s was considered the pharmaceutical heyday of mental health treatment, by the way, just so you guys understand. So, life with autism and ADHD, what is it like? Life with autism, well, it's actually very complex. Life with ADHD is very chaotic. Now, you put them together, like myself, and it's like having two radios playing on different stations in your head at the exact same time on constant loop. So it's like you got one set of thoughts over here and one set of thoughts over here, and they're kind of just going on repeat. Now, because of this, people will see like quirky, what they consider quirky behavior, or what looked like problematic behavior. But what they did not see was the constant masking that the children often do. So what does that mean? Masking actually means putting a face to match whatever environmental situation that the child will find themselves in. In school, often it would end up being the quiet kid, or the try-hard kid, or the overachiever. And at home, often they're the emotional one. And at social gatherings, they're often considered the awkward ones, and could be sometimes the funny ones. Now, at the doctor's office, they're viewed as the patient normally being problematic and difficult to treat. Now, for autistic kids, masking was actually survival for us. For ADHD kids, it's actually constant redirection. You know, they're trying to basically appear to be like we're focused, right? And we're calm and we're normal, but inside it's mentally exhausting on us. But we keep going with it because that's what we have to do. Now, what's behind that? Like, what's behind the mask? The truth is this. Behind the mask, we are not being raised. We were being corrected. And we were being managed. In many cases, we were actually being experimented on for the latest medications and treatments that was going on. Normally, the psychologists and counselors, psychologists and doctors would get your parents to sign off on it. Hey, this is a new great treatment plan that you need to consider and think about. Blah, 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 so on and so on. So autism is actually rarely acknowledged, okay? ADHD is often written off as behavioral issues, or just bad parenting due to the parents not knowing enough about autism treatment. Now, if you ask around, the answer that majority of adults would give you back then, you know, at that time, if you were quiet, they said you were basically shy. If you could not sit still, they said that you were hyper. If you melted down and had like kind of like a mental crisis is what they call it now. Back then, it was just like a meltdown, or like a psychotic breakdown. There's all different kinds of names for it depending on the severity of the situation, really. And because of that, they would often call you disruptive. Now, hear me out on this. So instead of trying to understand us, they sent us a different specialist. Basically, that was due to the school's advice normally, after talking to the counselor. Now, these specialists always leaned on different medications back then, especially back then, and often it was the latest form of treatments. And you would end up with one pill for anxiety, another pill for focus, another pill for side effects, which was cured by the two other medications that you were prescribed that actually came with new prescriptions, new trials, and new experiments, okay? Now, if the pills did not fix the child, or adult in some cases, they would basically run more tests on them, and they would circulate more questionnaires, more labels. Some were hospitalized, normally in 3 different types of situations. First type, clinical visits, which was where you go and you see the doctor for so long throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout the month, depending on your situation. The second form is called daytime resident, okay, where you're going to be there all day long and they're running tests on you, and every day you're going in there and doing something. And then you have what they consider full-time resident programs, and that's what a lot of times they try to push the parents into. And what this was 24 hours a day medical treatment. In these hospitals, they would basically lock the children down, restrain them after sedating them. And for autism and ADHD, for the kids who don't basically fit in with the other social groups, is what people consider. See, the system was never actually built to actually treat the problem. It was actually built to monitor and control and sell drugs. See, teachers and medical professionals, they love to talk about life skills. They told your parents, give them structure, books, routines, and lots of discipline. And some of us, most of us, we're actually highly engaged in books, music, and movies. I mean, we crave routines. It's just part of the disability. For autistic kids, that is actually crucial lifelines, and it's actually viewed professionally right now, currently, as professional lifelines. For ADHD kids, they were anchors in the storm. See, instead of recognizing that, they pathologize it. Sorry. See, autism became like you got sessions, right? And ADHD became distractions. See, folks, every behavior that we had was labeled wrong, and a lot of people's opinions currently too. The truth is, these obsessions and distractions actually saved the children. They were coping tools, long before anyone actually called them coping tools. The system made us feel ashamed for actually needing those and using those. And what I'm talking about is what you see right now, a lot of the poppers and fidget spinners, neurological things that they use to treat people that are often calming down effects, the squeezing, chewing, whatever it might be. And that was things that before was frowned upon, and the psychologists actually treat you for, by the way. So as we got older, we were not encouraged to basically dream, you know what I mean? Especially by the medical professionals. We were told to actually be realistic and settle down with what they considered realistic expectations. At family, we were told, most likely not. Finding a spouse, you were told normally maybe, but most likely not, they would tell us. And a career, sure, if it was basically entry level or tied to some type of specific special interest. So likely they would tell us just to look forward to finding a basic minimum wage job. And 2, if you have to, they would tell us, meaning because they were minimum wage jobs. They would tell us that'd be the realistic expectation for us based on our mental handicaps. Success back then, that was if you managed to survive it quietly and not rock the boat, they would often tell us. You know what I mean? That would be our form of success, like, because we are making in society and we don't need that much extra help. We're taking our medications the correct way. We're going to treatment the correct way. We're holding down the job for longer than a year. These are things that they factor in. You're not having any type of behavioral outburst towards any of your coworkers or anybody in society that you're around. They'll factor those into it. See, basically they would tell you, do not set yourself up for failure. You're most likely going to end up doing something janitorial or fast food, they would say. This is what parents and doctors and teachers basically were taught to tell us. If we were lucky, maybe we could learn computers or tech, because back then there was even signs of people in autism and ADHD doing extraordinary work and amazing work in computers and technology sectors. In fact, they are currently some of the biggest workers in those sectors. Look at Elon Musk himself. He's rumored to be autistic himself. So, do not get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with these type of jobs. Okay, nothing wrong with them. I've done them my whole life. The problem really is being told that is all that they can do. See, that is the ceiling that they could reach. That the low was just because our wiring was different from others in society, and there's just no hope. There's nothing you could do. So they would set you up with just, that was your expectation. You know what I'm saying? If you could have your own apartment or your own house and you're holding down a job, you're amazing. You're doing great, they would tell you. So they were building us up, you know what I'm saying? And they were managing us down. See, what they basically called self-sufficiency really was a quiet form of survival techniques. See, by your high school, many of us actually did what mental health professionals call burnt out. In autistic kids, this was done because of constant masking, even around family and friends. ADHD kids, this is because of constant correction and redirection. See, both of us basically end up over-medicating, causing us basically to be burned out at a young age. By high school, many of us basically just lose complete trust in doctors and into medical hospitals, and lost trust in the school system, and often end up losing trust in ourselves as a result in the long run. See, friendships, they start to fade out for a lot of people that are autistic and ADHD. Social life for us became basically exhausting. And we had constant trust issues that would actually begin to start to stack up. Like, does this person actually really care about what I'm saying or doing, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Is what that means. And you're in your mind playing over and over again. Or are they just using me for my ability to be able to do this or that? That was always a factor as well. Okay, so this is what I actually call short-term isolation. See, we show up to a party and we leave in an hour. Many of us actually have many acquaintances. However, we actually have very few close friends. There's walls between us and family and friends and every professionals we know. Like, literally walls between us. Like, sometimes we do it on purpose and sometimes it's unintentional. See, and eventually that short-term isolation, that becomes a lifestyle for us. Homebody routines will start to begin. Avoiding grouping, social gatherings will actually become routine in our nature. Not because we did not care about anybody or that we did not want to be around anybody, but because the social energy, basically what it took for us to fit into the social norm, simply was just too much for many people to take mentally, and they find themselves being exhausted mentally as a result and drained. See, our brains basically, when you have autism and ADHD, they basically never shut off. Okay, our brains are constantly going until we fall asleep. In some cases, a lot of us dream a lot too, from what I've understood. I myself don't, but I've heard it's a factor. See, autism and ADHD, they both keep our minds racing. Okay, I had a psychologist one time. I don't know if I mentioned it later on in this article, but I had a psychologist one time compare it to NASCAR racetrack, and like a bunch of cars racing around in a circle, but because we're not wired correctly, the thoughts that we're having, which are the cars, are going in different directions and causing chaos and mayhem in our head. Okay, and that's basically how she described it. The brain never shutting off. Now, for some of us, that meant clinging to sessions, right? And hyper-focusing. For others, it meant reaching out for drugs or alcohol or something to finally quiet that noise that's constantly going on in our heads, to slow that head spinning that we find ourselves experiencing so often with the little colored dots floating around. If you know, you know. See, numb our mental and emotional chaos, if you will. See, but for neurological brains, neurodivergent brains, substances hit way harder for us. See, they don't just become like traps, okay? They actually become addictions, and pretty fast at that. Trust me, addiction will depend on the isolation factor on this. It will wreck relationships. It will burn bridges with the people, meaning the disabled individual and others. Basically, society will end up saying, see, that's just the disorder. They're just messed up. There's nothing that you could do for them. We tried. Look at them. That's basically what will happen. See, but it wasn't it was not the autism or the ADHD that actually will break the person. It was the trauma behind it and the shame and the system that actually failed them behind it. See, here is what no one actually told the children growing up. You are not broken, you are not defective, you are not incapable, and you are not unlovable. You just grew up in a system that did not know how to deal with autistic kids, and especially autistic ADHD kids, or all of them individually. Despite all of that, you're still sitting here. You're still viewing this episode. You're still here, which means you're more capable than what anybody gave you credit for when you were growing up. And you know what I'm talking about. As I said, if you know, you know. You can have a family. You can actually have a career that you actually love. Just find that niche that you're into. You know what I'm saying? One of the things that you enjoy doing, find that and make money off of it. Like, make that your thing. You could build stability. You could actually chase dreams that matter to you. There's ways for you to do this. I know because I basically have done it. I actually have a wife. I have a home. I have a job. I have a church. I have this podcast / blog that I've learned to live with chaos and of autism and ADHD instead of actually being crushed by it. And granted, I've had ups and downs with this, but I can honestly say, for the most part, everything is good. You know what I mean? Now, no, I do not have any of all of what's considered the answers, okay? I am just proof that their labels and their limits that they put on you and restrictions that they try to put on you were actually wrong. They were wrong. You're actually more capable of doing way more than what they told you that you're capable of doing. Believe that. Now, and if they were wrong about myself, they very well could be wrong about you, like I was just saying. See, until next time. I'm not ready for that outro yet. Hold on. See, that's what I'm trying to say. A lot of places have considered ADHD and autism to be a curse, okay? Like in the eugenics special that I did, a lot of times family members would take their kids that were suffering from forms of autism or different mental handicaps, and they would just dump them off into the mental health hospital and basically leave them be. Sometimes they were forgotten forever. Like the kids are just dumped there and the parents moved along. It was very common. In third world nations, that's actually going on right now. In human trafficking, I went over that. In the human trafficking special I did, in organ trafficking, I covered that as well, to where a lot of these kids that are disabled, they end up in these so-called orphanages or hospitals, and a lot of times they end up in the hands of human traffickers and etc. So there needs to be a lot more done about understanding these type of disabilities with children. Do not get me wrong, I had a very good upbringing. In fact, my father was in the military, so I actually had very good health care growing up. I had really good treatment for my disabilities. I just feel like whenever you get into mental health, the history of it and the treatment forms of it and what it's really about, you start to see the stuff that I was mentioning, and there needs to be more done about that and how we view it and how we treat it. The kids shouldn't just wind up being addicts. I mean, I'll be honest with you. A lot back in my addiction days, I was told by doctors that the amount of drugs that I was consuming was enough to basically kill a 300-pound man. And I was 119, 125 pounds, like a walking skeleton. And I was doing just fine. The tolerance, what I'm saying is the tolerance level that you build up to different narcotics. By the age of high school, often they're able to consume way more drugs than what the average person is. And that goes with alcohol as well. A lot of times they'll find themselves being addicts in that sense because of the fact that they like the feeling of it more, the quietness of the thoughts, as I was mentioning earlier. A lot of us will have thoughts that just basically are non-stop in our head, and it's kind of like just playing on repeat. And there's not much that you could do about that, other than, in my experience, other than pray or listen to music, work out, whatever it is to the person, really, is the only ways to really deal with that. But that's the reason behind that is because you're on so many different narcotics as forms of treatment as a child. Like, they're like, here, take this pill for this. Now he needs to take this pill for this, and then take this pill for this. So by the time you're in high school, you're on 100 plus milligrams in some cases of different types of medications to treat your disabilities. So by the time that you discover drugs, you're able to consume way more than what the average person is. And I'm not proud of it, but I did OD a couple times. And I got up and just continued doing more drugs. Like there's this time, in fact, I'm going to record an episode about him, one of my good friends. But there was a time to where we were hanging out and doing some stuff, and I had OD'd off of some really good coke I had. And when I came to, they were handing me a blunt. So I hit the blunt, and what did myself do? I walked over and did a couple more lines. And that's just what I was saying. You find yourself in this form of routine, in this form of pattern of behavior. And that's why I said I think that there needs to be more done about the treatment. In fact, I'm happy to say that one of the doctors that I see was showing me that they've come a long way in the treatment, that they don't just basically slam narcotics down the children's throats like they used to. She was showing me all the different types of medication they have for ADHD, autism, bipolar, all the different things that are factored in here, and how a lot of them are non-narcotic treatments are very well acceptable now. As for whenever I was a child, it wasn't. The only forms of treatment that you had was narcotics. And believe me, there's a lot of things that come with that. Like you trade your pills for different favors, for example, all kinds of things, man. You open yourself up to all kinds of things with this stuff. And that's what I'm trying to say. There needs to be better treatment for children with these disabilities. I know it's getting better, and I hope it keeps getting better. Because whenever I was growing up, there was a lot of people in those hospitals, I'll be honest with you, that to myself, they straight up didn't feel like they needed to be there. You know what I'm saying? They were just a little bit different, like I was saying. You know what I mean? They might have been a little bit more emo-ish, a little bit more artistic, quiet, excessive, you know, whatever it might be. But I didn't think a lot of them needed to be there. Some of them did. You know what I mean? That's just like when you have a homeboy that's in prison. A lot of times I'll tell you, hey, man, some of these people, they need to be in here. You know what I'm saying? Not me and not many others, but some of them, they need to be in here, man, because that's just like home to them. That's what it is. And there are people out there like that. They need to be in these places, and these programs have reasons for them. I'm just saying I hope they keep getting better, because when I was growing up, this episode was about what life was like growing up back in the day with these disabilities. They didn't have all the things they have now. We didn't have the fidget spinners and the sensory friendly toys and the sensory friendly this and that. We didn't have all that. What they had was pills. And they said, take this one and take that one and see me tomorrow. Kind of, basically, you know. And that's really what it was. That was your treatment, and that's what they would do. And whenever your body got used to that form of treatment, they would just basically tell you to take this new form of pill. By the way, they would also start labeling you as difficult to treat at this point as well, because you're going through different types of medications, your body's getting used to it, etc., and etc. And now we all know that should be considered normal behavior, right? What is traditional ADHD medication? It's an amphetamine in a lot of cases, okay, which basically is a form of legal methamphetamine. And that's what I'm saying. And they were giving kids different forms of this and different Ritalin, and all kinds of other stuff. I'm talking as young as 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, and giving them pills to treat their different disabilities. And you're basically, essentially, in my opinion, if you're not careful, you create an addict. You know what I mean? If you think back on it, there's a lot of people throughout history that had autism and ADHD that were considered highly unorthodox and difficult to be around. Throwing out some names out there, Albert Einstein was considered to be autistic, believed to be autistic. If you know the history of Albert Einstein, you should know what I mean. A lot of people considered him very difficult to work with, very difficult to be around, because of his behavioral problems that he had even back then. And that's Albert Einstein. Michelangelo, a lot of the Renaissance painters, and scientists were considered to actually have different learning disabilities back then. Numerous different people had different disabilities. So the problem really is a lack of understanding of the disabilities and the strengths that they have. Lately, I've been finding myself following a lot more people on social media that actually have disabilities like myself, and they make content in a funny way or in a good way to where it makes sense for people to understand what life is like for us, and from our point of view. And that's why I started following them, and that's kind of what led up to me writing out this article back when I did, because this is an OTT. I'm still, as you can see around me, I'm still getting the room I'm using for recording and as an office set up. It's not done yet, so I'm still working on that. But at any rate, that's where I'm at with this issue. And I think that more needs to be done with it. I hope it keeps growing. And let me just say this, until next time, keep questioning and keep fighting and keep dreaming, because your dreams are not wasted. If you can dream it, as the saying goes, you can achieve it, okay? And that's very real. You just, like I said, you just got to find what you're into and what you like to do. For some people, that's painting, ceramics, writing, producing music, performing music, working out, becoming nutritionists and scientists, technicians, gamers. There's all kinds of fields that are ripe with people that are needed, that are autistic and ADHD. We have certain abilities that other people do not have. And now they're finally learning what these abilities are and how they can incorporate those into what they're considered the new modern day society. We're going into a new form of society that's going to require a certain type of people to be in that society. And I actually think there's a lot of people that are autistic and ADHD that actually inherently have the skill traits that are needed or are going to be needed for a lot of the type of jobs that are coming forward into the job market and in the upcoming years, because a lot of them require people to be obsessive and being able to zone in and out of certain things and have a high level of being able to thought process. If you're treated correctly with ADHD, it is considered a superpower. If you're properly focused on what you're doing, the amount that you can do compared to other people is phenomenal normally, especially with the level of work that they actually do. Same thing with autism. If they could zone out and they're not bothered with what they're doing, normally it is way more detailed, way more better, and probably, honestly, a lot of times over informative, like way more information than what people needed. It's a common trait of people with autism. You give out way too much information. It's just, we can't help ourselves. It's like we had such an upbringing to where people misunderstood what we're trying to say, that we really do try to focus on what you're saying, and if we're understanding what you're saying is correct. A lot of times we don't understand sarcasm, and that's why you hear about so many behavioral problems. We have a flight or fight response that's like no other in a lot of cases. And this is due to that factor. We don't know. I mean, you got to think about it. In the 80s and 90s, like I said, there wasn't much known about it. And if people were bullied for their disability, it wasn't really like, they weren't really dealt with appropriately. Let's put it like that. They kind of got away with it. And then that's when they came out with, like, you know, the RCP rooms, where there's like the special needs rooms and all that, which is a form of separation from society, from the rest of the social herd, is what I was mentioning earlier. If you study psychology and anthropology and all that kind of stuff, you know about social groupings and social herds. Whenever you're looking at society and you're looking at a different type of society, they call it social groups and social herds. And everybody has this normal people, I should say that, normal people, they have this necessive need to find a herd to fit in, if you will. It's like a thing built into them to where it's almost compulsion. It's like they could actually have, majority of people, they can actually have like different groups and different herds they're part of. You know what I'm saying? Like they might go hang out with rockers one night and country people the next night, and then people over in the hood the other night, because they're into different things. And that's part of that, what I'm talking about with social grouping. But a lot of people that find themselves in the autistic realm and ADHD realm, because of our different disabilities and factors, and because we're not too keen on social events in the first place, we find ourselves perfect for a lot of the jobs coming out, meaning tech, like I was saying, and different things like that in that sector. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. This was meant to be just a 10-minute episode. It's turned into half an hour over. And again, it's been Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. Oh, let me just say this. Now that I'm getting the actual room I'm planning on using set up, you guys can expect more material coming out, hopefully at a smoother rate, finally. I've been waiting to say that because so many people told me, man, you've been saying that for the past year. The last year was just rough. Personally, off camera, I had a lot of things going on in my personal life that I had to deal with, and I've actually got treatment for a lot of different things and just things I had to deal with. But I've been dealing with that, and finally I felt like it's time for me to actually start writing out my material and coming out with new episodes. So you guys have another OTT coming soon, very soon, that I'm going to get going for you guys. And this one has been on autism and ADHD. And a form of treatment basically in the 80s and 90s, and what it was like from my perspective, being a kid in the 80s and 90s that was going to the forms of different treatment for it. And you also got 2 series specials this season I got slated for, by the way, folks. 2. Normally I do 1, and normally the last one will go into, if I do 2, that one will normally go into the next season. I'm not sure how I'm going to plan out this season. I'm rebuilding the show. I'm rebuilding the platforms and the blog. So please reshare, and please find the show on the different platforms and subscribe and reshare so we can get the show rolling out again the way that it used to. And I plan on getting more material out. And you guys have unique episodes coming. Don't worry, it's not all going to be OTT. I have a really strong connection to the true crime community. I have some true crime material coming out. I'm not sure when I'm planning on releasing that, but as you can see, I have a bunch written out that I'm planning on doing, and some of those are going to be, from what I remember, is going to be on true crime and different perspective of that. So you guys got that, looking forward to it. But again, this has been Mike from Mike's Random Thoughts. Everybody have a good night, and I'll see you guys on the next one, which will be coming real soon.